Yo, what's up, nerds? It's MTG Man, and so I've talked before, about how playtest cards and uncards are honestly getting pretty close to just what our regular card design is. So I thought I'd talk about that just a little bit more today. Now, here's like a prime example, right? We're gonna look at a play or not a playtest card, an uncard, big furry monster, right? So you have to play both halves of it in order for it to come in together, right? Well, that's literally just the meld ability from fucking Eldritch Moon, where you take two creatures, you meld them together, and you get a different creature. Um, if we want to look at cards like Pipa, Duchess of Dice, ooh, it's an uncard because it works with dice. But if you look at that, right, how is that really any different than like any of the Forgotten Realms, like any of the D&D sets? They roll just as many dice, and like at least Peepa's D6s. Everybody has D6s. If you own a copy of Monopoly, you have D6s. If you don't play D&D, why the fuck would you have D12s? Um, so it's just interesting how card design is kind of getting close. If we're going to talk about, well, unsets are doing funky things with like mathematical concepts like, ooh, just desserts deals exactly pi damage to target creature. Well, we just got this card, Zimone All Questioning, right? Where if you have a prime number of lands, you create a fractal token thing. But it's a prime number of lands specifically. So it's like, is it really, how different is controlling a prime number of lands than dealing an uneven amount of damage? Ooh, 3.14. It kills something with power or toughness 3. It doesn't kill something with toughness 4. This is basically just a bad lightning strike, alright? Because it doesn't hit players or anything. So I mean, like, I think there's just been a lot of overlap, honestly, or like, even if we're talking about, ooh, Crow Storm, specifically makes Stormcrow tokens, right? Ooh, how are you gonna reference other cards? Or like, Jund Out, it can become a copy of any of these cards. How are you just gonna reference other cards on one card? Well, even if we want to look at that, right, we have Garth One Eye, that just creates Shivan Dragons and Black Lotuses and things like that. And sure, that's from a Modern Horizons set, but still, it's just really strange. And even in Bloomburrow Commander, we have Murmuration. Just creates Stormcrows. This is exactly what the unset card did, except it's completely legal in Commander. And if we're just gonna say unset cards don't work, don't make sense, whatever, well, some of them are just regular cards. And even if you say, oh, well, it breaks normal play patterns, well, we have things like Gemstone Caverns, which cares about if it's in your opening hand and you're not playing first, you can put it onto the battlefield before your turn, right? We have, Serum Powder. Uh, Anytime you could mulligan it, you can then exile all cards from your hand and draw that many cards instead. So, I mean, we already have these cards that break, the basic gameplay loop, or like we have Apocalypse Chime that buries all cards from homelands. So we have cards that reference one specific set. It's not like there's all that strangeness if then, oh, we have unset cards that, refer to artwork. What's the difference between referring to who the artist is and what set the cards from? So I just think it's really interesting how the overlap is there. A lot of unset cards change things up. Well, we just got the Mind Skinner, right? If a source you control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage, and each opponent mills that many cards instead. Does turning damage into mill not just sound like some sort of unset card that we would have gotten like a couple of years ago? Or like if we're gonna talk about names, ooh, unset cards have weird names. We have Asmarana Mardecai Destina Koldakar. And I know the joke is the long name, but Asmarana Mardecai Destina Koldakar was actually referenced on the flavor text of a gargoyle like 30 years ago. So it's established that characters and cards can have weird names, right? So I don't really see why there's a reason, that some of them are really out there. We have cards that reference the fucking prisoner's dilemma, and that's just fine. That's just a normal card in a commander set.
Or we have Goblin Game, where each player hides at least one object. Then all players reveal them simultaneously. Each player loses life equal to the number of objects he or she revealed. The player who revealed the fewest object then loses half of his or her life rounded up. If two or more players are tied for fewest, each player loses half of his or her life. How the fuck are you going to explain this, right? How are you going to say this isn't just an uncard, right? So you hide objects, but at the same time, it doesn't say like players find those objects. It's just whoever hid the least number of objects loses. So like, how exactly does this card fucking work? Um, and I think that really, we're at this point where it would be interesting to see a format, right? Where somebody went through every uncard, went through every playtest card, right? And then just decided what's legal. Because, I'm not going to argue, right? I'm not going to be like, oh, I think, well, actually, this is a bad example because I think Infinity Elemental, a 7 cost that just wins when it attacks, I think that could be fair. All right. I'm not going to argue that, flavor judge. All right, because flavor judge is subjective, right? You ask a player outside the game if something makes sense. If they say no, you counter spell or ability, right? I'm not going to say flavor judge makes sense. I don't want flavor judge to be legal, right? But like bingo, when a player casts a spell, put a chip counter on one of the mana costs for bingo, and then it gets +9/+9 for each set of 3 numbers in a row. I think bingo could be fair. I think bingo could just be a legal card, right? Sure, it's a little bit strange keeping track of mana costs, but I mean, is it really that hard? Is this really any more confusing than Goblin Game? And I know you can say Goblin Game is like an old ass card or whatever, but what I'm saying is we have strange cards in the game. You know, what really makes fucking Goblin Tutor that crazy? Goblin Tutor is a 1 cost tutor, sure, but it's just strange. That's what that's what it does. It sure, the ability's a little different. You roll a dice, but could you really see this card being broken? Maybe it's broken. Who knows? But could you really see this card being like much different than a card that could just be printed into standard? All I'm saying, uh, un/playtest format question mark. Would y'all like to see like a going through of every uncard, and I'll try and justify to see what could be legal? Let me know, because I have looked a lot at and playtest cards. All right, for a while I was doing a set of decks on the channel. Um, I think I called it like Unmander or something stupid, where it was just using uncards and building decks around them. And some I didn't get to finish. Some really didn't have that much going on, but like I had a full burn deck. I had a full. Well, actually, I didn't finish your lock, but your lock gets a lot better with uncards and playtest cards. So I just think it's interesting to like, what would happen if they were legal? Because they're printed cards, people put thought into them. So the idea that they're just kind of sitting around somewhere kind of makes me sad in a sense, because unless you rule zero it in, nobody's really playing with them. Um, and you can't really tell me, oh, uh, you know, well, Magic sub games are Charizard, but I mean, you can't really tell me some of these aren't just like normal cards, or even if they are strange cards, it's interesting. It's a different, look at autograph book, right? So sure, you have to have players sign it, right, or whatever. But even then, once players do sign it, even if it has 10 counters, it's a 3 and tap it, draw a card every turn. Sure, you pay 3 and tap it every turn to draw a card. That's okay, but is that really that much better than just a regular card? I don't really think so. I think it's pretty balanced overall. But this has been MTG Man. Let me know what you want to see, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out. Shut the fuck up.